Greetings ladies and mental gents, and welcome to today's Reddit quickie video, taken from the HFY subreddit. The story is called Unmasked, written by JeremiahHellRider. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. The cold was the first thing that I remember after opening my eyes. It sent shivers down my spine. The blank metal walls of the room were just like I'd left them before bed. The room had a distinct scenery to it. Yeah, my little universe had me. The bed and the freezing cold. No worries or hope. No future or past. Sadly, I was already corrupted by the twisted universe outside. I would go mad if I were to stay here any longer. Not that it mattered, as I was already insane as my kin can get. With the thoughts of my latest hallucinations behind me, I stood up and shambled towards the door. The cold ever stronger. Sadly, I was too rash. Only after taking my first step outside did I remember my neighbor who enjoys the late-hour visits to the station's group gatherings. There was no escape now. Trying to avoid him would only make things worse. He was halfway to the right side of the elevator when we encountered. I squeezed my claws as if turned towards me. "Coward! Parasite leech!" These were just a few of the insults the old war veteran had launched at me. I could have told him to stop, but I also could have reported him. But what was the word for the sick in the head fool versus a decorated war hero? There were victims of conflict and industrial accidents here at the asylum, all care of our collective. To him, madness was just another lie one told itself to get out of responsibility. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps I was just lazy. But wouldn't that just to confirm the validity of my sickness? Regardless, as the veteran's sour glances turned into invisible anger, I held myself together with an incoming barrage of humiliation. He opened his mouth, but no strike came forward. Instead, I heard light footsteps coming from behind me. When I turned around to look, and the culprit with his interruption came into view, I froze. At the very moment, every scale of my body turned to stone, and every thought I had dissolved into dust. It took what I felt like a decade for the human to leave the elevator. With each step, it took time slow to such an extent that I felt like the universe ended and started again. The mere moments it took for it to pass by me and knock on the door a few rooms up from the corridor was almost longer than my whole life before that point. As the moments passed and the sound of the knocks echoed through the corridor, I got a clearer image of it, from the loose shoelace on its foot to the out-of-place hair on its head. But most important, the mask. Only when the door opened, one cheerful kin of mine let a human in, did I manage to leave my paralyzed state. I tried to hold myself together as the usual emotions brought on by the humans ran its course. A more distinct sense of madness, fear, grief, a pinch of anger, and finally, curiosity. All the feelings brought on by those creatures and their god-forsaken masks. The mask was meant to keep the likes of us safe from the visage of the horrors that supposedly lie beneath it. The mask was hiding whatever emotion or complexion the human could have. The mask, which under the plastic surface covered the alien symbols and colors, held supposed horrors so potent that my kin feared to even be in its presence, to the point where humans hidden themselves had become simple courtesy. It didn't help me, however, in fact. It simply drove me further into fear. The masks hurt me and soothed my pains. It fed my madness and brought me closer to inner peace. The veteran, who had been standing firmly with his head raised as if expecting an enemy charge, spoke up after the human was at a shut door behind himself. "Look at that hoot who calls us kin, companion to a human. I would expect that from a confused loser like you." Had he just confided in me? Perhaps I wasn't as unapproachable as I thought I was. Regardless, this did play in my favor as the veteran skipped today's verbal beating, surely to save it up for another day. I quickly slipped into the elevator the human took as the veteran staggered towards the other side of the corridor. I made my way to the lobby of the apartments and recorded my time of exit at the terminal by the door. I could finally have a few hours of distraction outside. Normally, breathing in the filtered air freshly pumped in from the life support sector always gave me a small sense of freedom. But today the madness was too strong. On top of that, my body hurt more than usual. With each step I took, my legs felt heavier and heavier. My neck was always stiff from the cold, but now my shoulders felt frozen. The hours at the logistics office didn't help at all. Taking care of boxes all day was sadly the only job I was capable of with my current sickness and set of abilities. Judging from the dark sky above, it was midday. At this time, the blue star of our solar system would be shining above the red-hot plains of the Wood Owl, which was orbiting around. As such, it was necessary to turn the carbon oscurum curtains above the station's glass dome, lest we get fried up by the heat. In a few hours, the large halls of the workspaces around the station would come to life as the star shined into the station. Bright enough to warm our bodies, but not so warm as to burn. As always, when the sun reached its peak, we would all retreat to the rest of the curtains closed. Not me, however. I was responsible for keeping the logistics office running in the dark hours. Who better to run the graveyard shift than an insane weirdo? Just like every night, I started by wandering aimlessly through the dimly lit and sparsely populated corridor. But of course, one could never spend hours on end without an objection. Soon ideas were taking shape in my mind. Perhaps a visit to the office for a quick inspection. Or, I guess I could... I would perhaps like to visit the archives. There is always something interesting to see there, like the writings of the... Oh no... I quickly turned my gaze towards the small private shops lining on the main corridor, Sector B. The Gushko Corp, Soylent Green, Hustle Al Pasta Delicacies, Dalton Baked Pasta. Wouldn't be better if we spread out all of these identical places instead of putting them all in the same corridor. No one likes walking 20 minutes just to eat the same paste, and I don't think having allowed customers next to your apartment would be fun. I wish we talked about the malice of the year's conversations instead of whether to let the Zarklans in. Again. In fact, I could just take a walk to the convention center and hear the new gossip around. But there might be, Hey, I could visit the foundry. They had metal crafts groups today, and I would be so much fun making the mass of metal sheets again and reminding myself of how much I guess I could try my chance with the writers in Sector F. Yes! After all of that, so much fun to embarrass myself. Or maybe even... I froze. Fear gripped me as I realized my mistake. Foreign symbols lined the stall signs. Incomprehensible speech came from half-open windows. The sights brought on by tens of cultures clashed against the brutalist architecture of the collective station. I was in the alien quarter. Many sleepless nights were spent planning for this moment, but now, with all of it was meaningless. I was stuck in the wolf's den, and only with the strength of my own 2 feet were going to pull me out of this one. I looked around to see which way I had come from, but obviously I was too distracted by my thoughts to remember that. Next, I looked at the corridors leading back up to my sector. Signs were placed in front of the walkways that led unfortunate ones like me. To Sector D, no, not through here. To Admin, neither here. To Doxy, no. To the Terran Trade Goods, neither. This was, Once again, I had been too fast and careless. Now I was face to face with the storefront of a human shop. Glass displays filled with masks of various sizes, shapes, and colors. Despite lacking the face behind them, they still had same effect on me. I was fully petrified. I hated the masks. They made me feel better than I would ever be. I hated them. I was stuck as before. The earlier encounter had hardened my nerves, but the sight of the masks was still enough to stick me in place. I almost felt dizzy as the madness fully gripped me. I could no longer resist both body and mind. I gave in. Luckily for me, I was weak, and even though my mind could surely suffer from more, my body was not made of the same material. Soon I was on the ground gasping for breath. I could only drag myself up to the side of the trash container as to hide while the effects passed. I was going to have another session of Ugosh treatment again. If I let the collective down once more, I would never live with myself ever again. The humiliation alone was enough to break someone. The only thing left to do was closing my eyes for the rest. Enough excitement had been had. It was time to head back to the office. That's when an unfamiliar set of sounds came from behind me, followed by my own translation device's interpretation. "Hey, are you okay?" There was no time to think. A response was necessary. I gave out the most cookie-cutter sentence that came to my mind. "I am of adequate condition, thank you for your consideration." A moment passed as my response came through as they answered it. "I believe I recognize your voice. Do you work at the logistics office in Sector B? I think I heard your voice at the booth while picking up my friend's imports." I was too tired to react, so the only thing to do was to grab the side of the trash can and rise. As I did so, every bone in my body hurt immensely. Finally, I managed to turn around and look straight at the ruin-covered mask facing me. The pain on my back went from annoying to painful as my shocked body hit the ground once more. The mask was almost romantic, almost sexual. I couldn't decide whether I hated it or myself more. Footsteps came rushing as I rolled around on the metal tiles. Harsh hands started pulling me up as I grasped for breath. Indistinctive chatter from the many subjects filled my ears. The translation device had already given up on understanding the mass of speech. So I did the same. Unfamiliar corridors were passed as we finally reached the front of a local clinic. I tried to protest at first, fearing that the collective would write me up for this. But my cries were mute as I was carried into a room while one sleepy kin of mine followed. I tried apologizing for interrupting her sleep, but only whimpers came out of my mouth. Finally, my perilous journey came to an end as I was placed on a soft surface of a hospital bed. When I looked back to see the doctor, she wasn't there. Instead, 3 humans stood in her place. My heart could take no more. Hallucinations reigned as the darkness came. Wild beasts tore at me, piece by piece, as I ran for some peace. How dare I occupy the soul, deserving not a piece? The cold was the first thing I felt after opening my eyes. It sent shivers down my spine. The metal walls of the room were just as I left them before. The room had a distinct serenity to it. Here my little universe had me. The bed had the freezing cold. No worries, no hopes, no future, or past. However, I'd been given a purpose. A note hung on the northern wall of the room. Sector E, Corridor 2, Hall 14. Southside pit stop, 49th major cycle. As the memory of the last night flowed back to me, I started to realize the weight of my responsibility. Encouraged by the drugs the doctor had pumped into me, I'd agreed to meet again my human saviors. Otherwise, the doctor wouldn't have believed my story about food poisoning. I lied back and looked at the metal ceiling as the plans of escape rolled in my mind. Self-harm for force visit back to the doctor, creating an artificial situation at the office to make myself occupied. Suicide. Just lying there, waiting. Coward, parasite, leech. The words were spoken by the veteran echoed in my mind. I had chosen to be treated. I had chosen to keep going for hope of recovery. I wanted to function the way my kin had to. I had chosen this path in life. My madness be damned. I was going to that human place in any case. With enthusiasm, I marched towards the door and opened it with force, only to be greeted by a veteran leaving work as I was. Too rash every time. After the conclusion of today's verbal abuse and some leftovers from yesterday thrown in, I was out in the corridors, and the few people like me with night jobs were scrambling around as they went to their workspaces. I also joined them. The number of my kin around me fluctuated as I passed through the corridors of the various importance, but after a few more minutes of walking and the elevator ride, I was able to be at the warehouse. I clocked in at the front gates and made my way towards the usual workstation. After that many months spent here, my work was almost mechanical. The robots around me, who followed commands without question, seemed more sentient than me. With the cooperation between my problem-solving mind and their efficient limbs, all the crates which piled up high tonight were put in place. Now it was time to do the visitor management. Higher than usual enthusiasm, I entered the employee's booth as a kin and an alien alike lined up. Lucky for me, humans rarely came to this side of the station. Soon there were boxes, bags, and crates flowing out of the warehouse as I handed them to the respective owners. Shopkeepers received merchandise. Mercenaries got reinforcements and locked gun crates. Regular kin were handed personal items from loved ones. That's when I noticed an unusual sight at the back of the line. After a moment of hesitation, a reality of the situation became clear. Without a moment's notice, I shut the panel connecting my booth to the outside and snapped down the out of order sign. The movement of my robot friends came to a halt. There was nothing else to do. No one was coming to save me. One mistake could ruin me. There were two options, failure or action. I rushed to the offices and entered the empty infirmary. The medical cabinet stood closed. I rushed over and pulled its handle, locked. The security camera was facing me. Was it turned on? Action! I grabbed a pair of scissors and concentrated on the kin-made lock. I may have been a parasite on society, but I at least had a resourceful parasite. Lockpicking was just one of my skills that I had learned to make myself feel actually useful. Soon enough, the lock was on the ground, and I was rummaging through the various medicines and drugs in the cabinet. My mind was racing between thoughts of searched. Xenophil, camera, break, mask, Trenadol, camera, septical acid, mask, camera. Finally, behind the bandages, I found it. Deposidol, my old friend. I passed around a little syringe between my claws. No hesitation. I injected myself on the right arm just as I'd done countless times before. Pain. Run. Mask. Mad. Scotch. Camera. I looked back at the camera, overlooking me. Was it turned on or not? No guards had broken in here yet, so I was in the clear. Or maybe not. No time. I ran back to the booth just as the drug kicked in. The floor skidded underneath me. I managed just to seat myself in the chair as the panel connecting me to the still waiting people outside. An elderly kid of mine came asking for a crate from the capital. I sent it to him. An alien I didn't recognize the species of asked for frozen foods from some far-off planet. I gave it to him, I think. Faint sounds of the police sirens were in the air. They were coming for me. Then the one came. Hey! Back up on your 2 feet, I see. Normally I go to Sector D warehouse, but I just wanted to see you. Indeed, how may I assist you? You are this cold to me after all we've been through in the foreign quarter. I pulled myself away from the panel to hide the sounds of my teeth grinding against one another. Apologies, I got carried away while at work. My claws were shaking. I hid them from the view of the panel. Ha! Save up your energy for tonight. Net is going to be the one carrying you their way then. If you're coming, of course. Indeed, I'll visit the establishment. Well, we'll be waiting for you. Now, can you get me a crate? It should have an ID of... I blindly obliged as he took his crate and walked away. The rest of the hours was spent mindlessly taking orders while the drug did its job. Almost 120 minor cycles and I was done. But looking back at it, I felt like only a minute had passed. I had to sit there waiting long after the last person had left. After a session of puking in the bathroom and putting back the infirmary lock, I made my way towards the alien quarter and to give an address. Unlike my last visit to the streets were crowded with persons from across the cosmos, but my kin was still made up the majority. Normally, I would lose my mind among so many people, but perhaps because of my recent experiences, or perhaps because I was too tired from the drug, that I could bear the crowds. I even managed to avoid a few of the humans with the peripheries of my vision. Hall 11, Hall 12, Hall 13, Hall 14. I was here. Now what? Just when I realized that I had no plans for what to do once inside, I couldn't be high on for hours without anyone noticing. I simply stood there looking at the doors as my watch inched closer to the 49th major cycle. There was less people outside walking now. I concentrated on solutions. Ideas, absurd and practical, crossed my mind as I brainstormed, but no clear solution was found. How could I, the one who can't even face a single human without destroying his brain, could enter a hall filled with them? But I did. Many people always act irresponsible and get away with it, so why couldn't I do the same, one foot in front of another? I walked across the corridor and stood at the front of the doors. There was the gates of either the temporary freedom or endless punishment. I slipped inside as quick as a ghost. The pub had a unique smell to it, rotten but fresh. Faces greeted me. No, that's wrong. Emotions greeted me. Were they happy, sad, shocked? I didn't know what they had the feelings. All my fears flew away while I slipped into and fell on the ground with my racing heart suddenly slowing down. I had seen it. I had seen them behind the mask. It was beautiful. It was ugly. But it spoke to me, and I saw myself in those faces, always hiding under the masks. One of them came rushing at me as I struggled to get up. Was that the anger in its face? Maybe confusion? It didn't matter. I just wanted to see the emotion. The human came and started putting me up. Just then I started putting on my mask over its face. No, this could not stand. Being irresponsible had worked once, and it could work again. Before the human could put the mask on, I grabbed his hand and pulled it away. No, it's not necessary. Emotions. The human's facial features changed as I spoke. Every little movement and muscle sparked joy and interested me. If you're going to be fine with it, yes, please. Let us converse as suggested. Soon I was sitting in a chair too tall for me, with a glass of water while the humans conversed. I don't remember what they said to each other. I think that they thought that I hated humans, but it didn't matter to me anyhow. Their faces were what mattered. Every mimic, every muscle movement felt more complex and illustrative than 1,000 words. Seeing all the different expressions on all the different faces was like discovering new colors. Every moment I found new ways to understand them and myself. As I walked back home after the long night of conversation, I felt mad as ever. But now I could describe my madness, not with words, but with faces. I tried to copy them as I walked through the desolate corridors. I was free. Free to suffer, but also free to be content. The hallucinations came again as I slipped into bed. Fighting with your glass shield, Pyrrhic victory on the field. Celebrate your triad of no more. Weep for the blood and tears that you will wield. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, listed in the description down below. The easiest and best way would be to share this video and my channel as much as possible. I'll see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one until then. Cheers.